Hello, this is Jill Varvel with the Dixiecast podcast. And today I am going to deliver an episode which is in honor of my mother, Mary Jo. I know that, everybody has a mother and everybody has something special to say, but I feel particularly led to dedicate this episode to Mary Jo because she wasn't alive when I made my move from Washington State here to the South. And I'm from the South. I was born in Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana. And there's so many occasions in which I travel throughout the South that I feel like, oh, man, Mom would love this. And particularly speaking, I don't know if you see those cows in the background. My mother was one who, I don't care where we were traveling. Now, mind you, I grew up in the Bay Area, so there weren't too many opportunities to find cows around the side of the road, so to say. But I kid you not, if we passed a cow, she was going to point it out. So my mother was, she was born in Maringouin, Louisiana, on a farm. She had 9 brothers and a sister. She kind of, she grew up the farm life, and she has a really delightful story that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you about how she met my dad. And, as she got up in years, shortly after we moved from California, she became kind of high needs, so to say, and her family and my dad, unfortunately, was no longer able to safely take care of her, and so she went into a home, and she was very well taken care of there. But as a result of that, obviously, as a result of the lockdowns, I wasn't able to see her very often, and I can remember, and this was just like such a frustrating thing. But, her birthday is in March, and I'd booked a flight, and this was in 2020. I'd booked a flight, hotels, all that foolishness, so that I could go visit my mom. And, of course, the place where she was residing, the governor just locked everything down, and she wasn't able to see her family. And it was just really unfortunate because ultimately I had to cancel those plans. And I never saw her again. She mercifully, the Lord took her only a few months later in September of 2020. And we had her memorial later on that year in November. And, it's just, as I look back on the craziness of things, while we were having her memorial at a VA park in Monterey, California. And of course, this was a result of all of the oppressive rules being enforced by or imposed by the governor. The very weekend of her memorial, while my family and I, and of course only 10 of us were allowed because, it's outdoors and all, and, everybody had to wear masks and sit socially distanced. That very weekend, the governor of California was spotted unmasked in the company of a whole bunch of people over at French Laundry in Napa. And I only mention that because, I'm bitter. I'm very annoyed by that because ultimately, there's my dad sitting all by himself weeping at his wife's memorial, not even able to have like a family member in close proximity to comfort him. But all that to say, I'm grateful that the Lord took her when He did, because things got pretty crazy. They went from crazy to crazier. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. What I'm here to talk about is just what a little spitfire she was, and how she really impressed me growing up. One of my earliest recollections of my mom was she had, there were 4 of us. I was the youngest. My closest sibling is 6 years my elder. And, obviously I I've kind of surmised. I was probably a little bit of a surprise, but it doesn't really matter. But when my mom went back to school, she tried to put me, I was probably like 4 years old. My mom tried to put me in one of these little college daycare little arrangements, and I would not have it. I fought and screamed and yelled and cried, and she didn't insist on, Joel, suck it up, She didn't make me go to that daycare, and I just remember feeling not necessarily victorious over that, but just so very loved that she heard me, that she understood me. Later on, of course, kindergarten, everyone goes to kindergarten, and I tried to pull the same song and dance. And I remember she stuck around, but, obviously it was all fine after that. But just the little instances in which I felt loved, supported by her. And, she was, she had me at 35, right? So like back in the 60s, the late 60s when she had me, that was kind of, I had an older mom growing up, I wasn't one of these kids that had like young moms that, my mom was always older and, she was always working and, she ended up becoming a real estate agent and was always very busy. And, I remember how hard she worked and how, no matter what, that woman, I kid you not, would come home and always have dinner on the table. And I'm not just talking like the kind of dinners that I make or the kind of dinners that I made for my family. I'm talking like homemade everything. I mean, the woman had a noodle maker, okay? She made homemade spaghetti. She had a meat grinder. Anyway, she was quite the cook, and people remembered her for her cooking. Another thing I want to share about her was that, she had a heart of gold, and I don't quite understand where a lot of the motivation came from. I mean, I never got that gene, I guess. But she would find people that either at church or I don't know where she found these people, but she would find these people and kind of adopt them. She would find women that were in need and she would take them with her to church, and she would learn about their situations, and if she assessed that they needed baby clothes or meals or what have you, she would take it upon herself to leave little baskets, for offerings, at her office. Or she would go around to her real estate office, asking people if they had, extra clothes. And I mean, she would just take up offerings for people. And I remember thinking, Mom, you don't know these people and you're driving clear to the other side of town and picking them up. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, I didn't inherit that gene, but she was so generous. And anyway, I wish that she was here, because at minimum, I would love to be able to be like, Mom, look at these cows, look at this pastoral beauty here in Northwest Arkansas, and look at this barn. I mean, she was one of these people that had pictures all around her house of barns that were reminiscent of the South, of course, where she grew up. But just a real, I miss her. But anyway, just a little bit I wanted to share about her. Obviously, it's just a pittance of my recollection of my mom and who she was. But I'm gonna show you guys some video. So when we were visiting her, I want to say it was obviously before the lockdowns, I was able to go into her room and chat with her. But she started to tell this story, and I'm like, I've never heard this story before. And so I surreptitiously turned on my video camera, and I was able to capture the most magical recollection of how she and my dad met and some of the pranks that she pulled. And I can't wait to share that with you.
Right over on the right, and I was sitting in the back. And when I'd go up to take communion, he'd be sitting there watching me. And I never realized he was watching me, and he never realized I was watching him.
Oh wow! So you met.
And then we had they had a luncheon where we would, how they give luncheons.
Yeah.
And I went to the luncheon. I didn't know he was going, and there he was. And he came up and introduced himself, and he said, "I've seen you at church." I said, "Oh, you have? It's a strange thing. I've seen you too." And then first thing you know, we got to talking, and he said, "Oh, well, let's go to a movie together tonight, huh? Are you busy tonight?" I said, "Absolutely, I'm not busy." So he said, "Well, can I pick you up at about 5 o'clock?" And I said, "Sure, if we're going to a movie." And that was the first time we went out together.
Oh.
And then that was the first time, but that was not the last time.
Right.
And so he took me home, and of course my dad was sitting on the front porch waiting for me to get home.
Huh.
He
was
always
this
did
in
that.
Monroe or was it in Maringouin?
What, honey?
Was it in Monroe or Maringouin?
It was Maringouin.
It was Maringouin. Okay.
And my dad wouldn't say anything, no matter what time I got home. He just wanted to know I was home okay. And that's the way it was, and went on and on. And sometime one of the guys would stop in front of in the street on the side, pull on the side to let me out. But we sat in the car for a little while, and first thing you know, he kissed me goodnight. My dad was sitting on it. My dad didn't say a word, no. And I got out and I went out, and he didn't say. I said, "Hi, Pop, you still here?" He said, "Yeah, I'm okay." Not a word. So he was pretty good about that, And then what was really a big deal we had a big dance at the school.
That's what I remember, the dance, I thought.
And I went to that dance, of course, and some of the boys would come and ask me to dance, and it was always the same one, the one I married. He never, he was just a very polite, never tried anything, And he said, "Let me take you home tonight." I said, "Okay." Because I had gone there with a friend of mine, a girlfriend. So he took me home and walked me up to the porch. My dad wasn't sitting on the porch. I guess he was still asleep. And so he just left me off, and that was it. Didn't hug me, didn't kiss me, just said goodnight. It was nice, and not knowing that he wanted to kiss me, and he wanted to sit down, but he didn't, because he
was
thought,
being polite.
Huh?
He was being polite.
He was very polite, and that is really that made me think a lot of him, because a lot of the guys would always want to paw you, and you can't stop that, And he didn't, and that really made me think a lot of him. And then he kept calling me to go out, and we'd go out to the dinner. One night he took me to dinner, and that was the first time any of the boys had ever taken me to the dinner, and I thought, this is something else. And I was really did like him very much, because he was so polite and a real gentleman. And then his mother was sitting, when I'd go to church, his mother was sitting there, and I guess he told her that I was the girl that he was dating. And she was watching me and thinking a lot of me, because I was going to communion every Sunday, and that made it good with his mother. And I guess she told her son that she thought I was a very nice girl. Well, we dated maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks or months, and finally he said, "I'm in love with you."
Oh.
Aww.
Just like that. I said, "You are?"
Aww.
He said, "Yes, can I kiss you?" I said, yes. Asked me to kiss, and he kissed me, and I thought I really was in love with him, but I didn't tell him that. So he called me another time. We went out, and he told me again he loved me, and I said, well, you know, I've been holding back on you. I fell in love with you too.
Oh, that's nice.
That's wonderful. What
And
a
that's
sweet
something-
story.
And then he said, well, I'm going to ask you to marry me. And he did. And I says, well, yes, I'll marry you because I love you. And he said, I love you. So it went on, and his mother arranged this wedding for us. And she invited her friends, and she said, Mary Jo, you can invite your friends. And I didn't. I invited some, but I didn't want them because I knew she was paying for it. I didn't invite a lot of them. And from there on, you know, he asked me to marry him, and I married him, and I'm still married to him.
Wow.
And then after that, I'm going to share a really funny story that she was describing what she did to one of her brothers when he talked in a disrespectful manner to her, and she didn't like it. And so she got even. And it's one of these stories like, I mean, here's this 80-something-year-old woman telling this story, and she's laughing her head off. And it's so funny.
We were sitting at the table, and he said something that I didn't like, and I said, why do you got to talk like that at the table? And he says, well, shut up your mouth. And I didn't like that when he said, shut up your mouth. I said, I'll get you. And listen what I did. Well, he had just polished his shoes. He's had a date that night. He just polished his shoes and was shining, and had a glass of water.
You put it inside the shoes?
I put water in his shoes. He didn't know I did that.
Did you go beat up one of your brothers?
I waited to see what was his name. His son of a beeping. Somebody put water in my shoes. And I'm about to die. I wanted to laugh, but I wouldn't dare, because if I laughed, he'd have knew it was me.
Man.
And then after he left, I laughed so hard, it hurt my back. It hurt my stomach. You know, when you laugh so hard, it laughs. I thought, even now, when I think about it, I just laugh so much about that.
Oh.
He never did find out it was me, and I never told him. So
That also explains Johnny, too, because they're the same, you know, Johnny was a
putting
crap.
water in somebody's shoes, that's about as bad as you can get.
Yeah.
Oh, is Johnny Mitchell's?
No,
No.
Johnny's mom's nephew.
Oh, but was it
I'm
Mitchell's
Tony,
son?
Tony.
Oh, Tony. Okay.
Am I giving
gotcha.
you some hints on how to treat the people you don't like?
Oh no, I'm just marveling at how, you know, how the old apple don't fall too far from the tree. Just saying.
Putting water in somebody's shoes about as bad as you can get.
Probably the only pair of shoes he had.
It was his dress shoes. Fortunately, he had another pair, but he hadn't shined them like he shined the one I put the water in.
Late.
So
Oh,
he had to
man.
shine the second pair before he went out. And shaking his shoes, trying to get the water out. I don't
Oh boy,
Not
oh
as
boy.
bad as you can get. But I tell you, I was a rotten kid. I was. I think
Well.
he might have said something to me that I didn't like, and I thought, I'll get even with you. But pouring water in somebody's shoe, you know, I couldn't fight. I'm not big enough to fight, so I figured that was a good one, and it was. It's awful.
Yeah.
That's how can you imagine anybody? And I was just a young kid. I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years old, you know, but smart enough to know how to do bad things. Oh boy.
That's really one of the things that I want to emphasize is that, you know, if your mother is still with you, I know you hear this, everybody hears this, call your mother, right? But seriously, on Mother's Day, call your mother. Wish her happy Mother's Day and tell her you love her. Because if I had that opportunity, I'd be really happy. So that's all I got for today. Thank you for joining me today on Dixiecast, the sound of the South. And we'll see you next time. for another heaping helping of Southern comfort for your ears.
There's a dark and a troubled side of life.